Thank you, Geraldine, and good morning, everyone. Um, it's so good to see a lot of you out there. I was looking for who I know, and I'm not sure who I know, but I'm sure more than I think I do. Yes, and as Geraldine told you, I'm past chair of our association, the ISU Retirees Association Board of Directors, and I bring you greetings from the board this morning. This ceremony is an important ceremony. It honors Iowa State University faculty, staff, and spouses who have died. We remember and honor the memory of their lives and give thanks for their service and support Iowa State University, in support of Iowa State University. And as you probably know already, normally this is an annual event and it's normally in person, but due to the pandemic, we were not able to hold this event last year to remember those who had died in the previous year from May the 1st, 2019 to May the 1st, 2020. We know this is a different format than usual, and we hope it's working for most of you, but we didn't feel we should wait another year to have this event. Please note, as Geraldine has mentioned, that the ISU Retirees Memorial Day website will be updated, and that's no later than June the 7th. And that website will include the recording of today's service and any additional submitted tributes, in addition to the ones that you have already sent in. And before we move on to the next part of our program, we do have a few reminders. Please make sure your microphone is muted. And if you lose your internet connection, which sometimes we do, you'll be able to come back into this room or onto this link using the same Zoom link that you used to get on the first time. During the program, if you would like to make a verbal tribute to your loved one, you may use the chat function at the bottom of your computer and send a memo with your name on it to Geraldine Logue, whom you've already met, and she will call on you later in the program to give that tribute. Another reminder or piece of information is that all submitted tributes will be posted on the ISU Retirees Association website. And if you have not submitted a tribute, but would still like to do that, it's not too late. You can send it to Geraldine Logue, the director of the ISU Retirees Association, by Thursday, June the 3rd. She needs to get it by the 3rd. So the website can be updated by the 7th of June. And I will stay online for a few minutes after we conclude this service if you need to ask for clarification about anything we mentioned today. In addition, Geraldine Logue and Mary Lynn Damhorst, whom you will hear from very soon, also will remain on the line. So again, thank you for being here today. And now I would like to invite Dr. Charles Knicker to offer the invocation to begin our service.
We come from distant and near places with diverse reasons, and we are at different and dissimilar stages of grief. We also have different views of a divine being. But we are bonded in a love and appreciation of those we remember today, partners with us, and they have become servants in a service of the Iowa State University and its mission. So let us join then in a spirit of prayer and meditation. Dear God, eternal mystery, creative force, we pause to rejoice, remembering stories of our cherished ones. We now recall their quiet devotion and honest labors. We celebrate their caring advising and amazing achievements. We glow with pride for their stewardship of the natural world. We recite their development of remedies and their deeds of well-being for the creatures of the earth. We reflect on their methods of inquiry and their thirst for the truth. We share their healing strategies for a hurting humanity. We admire their courage, moving from the familiar to the uncertain and the controversial. We count the hours they spent creating a future for us that we hope, with all the world, we are free from want or fear. We salute them for recognizing that ignorance must be overcome by education. And ultimately, we salute these patriots of the planet for inching us closer to global peace. Amen. So be it.
Thank you, Dr. Knecker. And now we'll move into the first and a very important part of the program. During this part of the program, Mary Lynn Damhorst, the current chair of the ISU Retirees Board of Directors, and I will read the names of our ISU family members that we know of or for whom we have been notified about their death, who died during the past 2 years. Those who have been remembered last year and those new for this year will be combined in alphabetical order. Their names will be displayed on the screen as Mary Lynn and I
don't know.
Mary Lynn?
Sorry. Joanne Adair. Mary Aarons. Mary Atherley. Mabel Auld. Hector Avalos. Mardith Benziger. Howard Bear. Thomas Barta. Charlotte Bennett. Jeffrey Berger. Carol Bishop. Joan Bishop. Donald Bayland. John Boehm. William Vogue. Eldon Boswell. Norman Boyles. Mary Jo Brearley. Gerald Bright. Joyce Brink. Betty Brown. Robert Brown. Barbara Buffington. N. Lawrence Burkhalter. Janice Burkhart. Marlene Burkheimer. William Buss. Donna Butler. Cynthia Campbell. Mildred Chapman. Diane Childs. Ki Dong Cho. Sok Sun Cho. George Christensen. Robert Christensen. Elmer Clayton. Donna Cleesby. John Jack Cleesby. Robert Cody. Bettina Tina Compton. William Cook. Joanna Corteau. Harold Crawford. John Cresswell. Phyllis Cunningham. James Curell. Patricia Dale. Charlotte Davis. Nancy Dean. Paul Doak. Luann Enderland, Paul Ennis, Willis Enquist, Marcia Even, Hester Hassel, Audrey Fawcett, Jack Ferguson, Robert Ferguson, Janet Fisher, Charles Chuck Frederickson, Albert Freeman, Beryl Fritz, Arnold Arnie Gardy, Linda Gallion, Julia Gammon, Dwayne Godfrey,
Lynn Graham, Carol Griner, Dallas Gummert, Margaret Peggy Garreau, Emmanuel Hager, Michael Hamilton, Beverly Hammer, Darlene Harrell, Sheldon Haugen, Richard Hagan, Glenn Hillsland, Laurent Hodges, Janet Hoff, John Homer Jr., Shang-Ching Shea, Vicky Hubby, Wallace Wally Huffman, Wallace Hutchison, Merlin Isles, Thomas Jellinger, Maxine Jensen, W. John Johnson, Mervyn Johnston, Berdine Caberly, Marvin Katzer, Rupert Kenyon Jr., K. Robert Bob Kern, Dean King, Eva Kinstall, Dorothy Kaiser, Julius Copland, Richard Kottman, John Kozak, Judith Lacasa, John Laughlin, Eleanor Sari Lamberts, Judith Judy Larson, Nick Lauder, Joseph Legg, Jane Linehan, Patricia Lurston, Carol Lindgren, Roger Lively, Dudley Luckett, Alice Lumadou, Donald Muckestad, Betty Mackey, Lyle Mackey, Rowena Malone, Floyd Manwiller, Catherine Mason, Joan Mattingly, Mary Mayfield, Billy McCall Sr., John Terry McConnell, John McCully Jr., James Jerry McGinnis, Terry McGinnis, Robert McIntyre, Viola McKim, Joy Minnie, Georgia Miller, Kevin Moeller, David Moore, Joel Moses, Lauren Munch,
Charles Mulford, Richard Munster, Margaret Murray, Joseph Musil, Barbara Negri, Robert Nichols, Anna Nilsson, Teresa Terry O'Brien, Gary Osweiler, John Pace, Paul Palmer, Betty Pepper, Ronald Peters, Sarah Sally Peterson, Lois Pies, Alan Potter, R. Rajagopalan, Connie Rasmussen, Cleve Redmond, James Redmond, Larry Reed, Nancy Riley, Mary Reinitz, Mary Ann Rich, Helen Ritland, Frank Rizzo, Roxana Robertson, Josephine Rosauer, William Bill Runyon, Dennis Denny Salisbury, Angelina Salisbury, Maurice Salisbury, Leo Schneider, Bruce Schuller,
A. Elaine Schwartz, Evelyn Tony Schwartz, Mark Shamblin, Dennis Shannon, Gerald Shabel, Donald Shuey, Kelly Sickerson, Kenneth Smith, Richard Smith, Shannon Smith, Phyllis Soderstrom, Mary Sutton, Laura Sweet Jones, Jerome Simons, Patricia Pat Teal, Thomas Thielen, Clyde Thogmartin, June Thomason, John Timmons, Ted Tosselby, Beverly Van Fossen, Francis Vaughn, Daniel Veeder, Ruth Wagoner, Bobby Warman, Richard Warren, Darlene Warrens, Carl Westberg, Helen Wyant, Gary Wiggins, Martha Mari Williams, Constance Connie Wilson, Royce Wingy,
Fred Wone, Corrine Wallens, Jerry Young, Suzanne Zafurano, Gerald Zarestki, Dolores Z.
Thank you, Mary Lynn. Colleagues, family, and friends. Geraldine Logue, whom you've met, will now recognize those who indicated via chat your desire to provide a tribute. Once everyone in the chat has been recognized, then those who have indicated by email to Geraldine their desire to speak will be called upon. Geraldine?
Excuse me. First I have on the list is Lisa Hartzman.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Hartsock. I'm Arnie Gardy's daughter. He was assistant basketball coach at Iowa State. He also worked for the Alumni Affairs and had so many wonderful community service roles for the Memorial Union Board, ISU Letter Winners. He helped to start that organization, and the Ames Story County Cyclone Club. My tribute to him, Arnie Gardy loved his family and his friends, and they loved him. He was kind, caring, interested, and present. We so enjoyed all the stories he told us about growing up in Armstrong, Iowa, attending college at Iowa State, life in the working world, trips he and my mom took, and the accomplishments and antics he and his friends had on the golf course. His memory was unbelievable. As young girls, we remember sitting in the ISU Armory, just a couple bleachers up from him while he coached. And sometimes we even tried to talk to him during the timeouts. We'd say, "Dad, Dad, psst, Dad." The noise those fans could make in the facility was crazy. And whether the game went into the W or the L column, we waited for him and the players outside the locker room once each game was over. Attending Big 8 tournaments in Kansas City, alumni events in Colorado, stays at our Spirit Lake cottage with extended family, or ski vacations with friends, he created such fond memories for us. He looked forward to gatherings and reunions. He'd love this. And he especially liked surprise parties. And my mom ensured that he had several of those over the years. He also appreciated his time at morning coffee clubs discussing politics, sports, and families with long-term friends. Once my sisters and I had our own girls, Arnie was the most lovable and encouraging grandfather. They talk about the strong values he instilled in them and reminisce about his great belly laughs, jokes, and thoughtful conversations. Dad, while you've accomplished so much on the court and baseball field, as a coach and businessman, it's really about all you did to love and mentor others to succeed and be leaders in the game of life. Your legacy on this earth is truly how many hearts you've touched. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next one is a combination tribute from Audrey Fawcett's children. So I'm not sure which of you is actually going to be speaking.
I will speak first. Today, we, Kristen, Robin, Mary, and me, Eric, are celebrating our mom, Audrey Lynn Fawcett, through her relationship with Iowa State University. She made the most of life. She saw opportunities at her doorstep, and she brought a sense of wellness and joy into countless lives. Looking back from our vantage point, these memories stand out.
Rehearsing community actors' plays on the Kurdish Hall stage, our weekly tradition of Sunday buffets at the Memorial Union, being a beloved nurse at the Student Health Center, known for her warmth, her positive energy and smile. While working at the health center, she made lifelong friendships with many of her colleagues. Together, they created an upbeat environment and supportive work. She had championed human rights and diversity and ran during lunch hour at the Old Man's Gym. Robin, is your mic on?
She took lots of courses at Iowa State University through our childhood, and also when she was a senior, she took college for seniors. She inspired us through this lifelong learning, and she was a beautiful writer, composing a book of poetry that's in circulation at the Ames Public Library. One of her first poetry classes she took at ISU with Will Jumper, And my sister Kristen is going to share one of these poems from her collection.
It's called Option. When people do not want to understand, they keep their minds untilled as virgin plains. Upon a wasting, dank, unfertile land, ideas, thoughts, and feelings fall like rains. No seed will grow within the sodden clay of preconceived conclusions held by those who cannot dare. What do they fear? To say, I want to learn, to know, their valleys close. The waters moisten surfaces of gray. Potential growth most surely lies inside. Yet convolutions simply spawn decay of spontaneity. It dies untried. There is a choice which each of them can make. Plant seeds of truth. Now watch the fields awake.
Thank you very much. I remember your mom in classes, so thank you so much. So next will be Janice Vogue Martin. Janice, if you could unmute your microphone, please.
Yes, I'm Clyde Thogmartin's wife. He grew up in Emporia, Kansas, and got a BA and MA in French literature at the University of Kansas, a PhD at Michigan in Romance linguistics, and did postdoctoral work in speech spectrography at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. And he taught linguistics, French language, culture, and composition at Iowa State for 35 years. He was particularly proud of the work he did as a founding member and chair of the cross-disciplinary program in linguistics that got a linguistics major established at Iowa State. And he served as a managing editor of the French Review, a journal in French and English. That was a task he loved despite the long hours. Combined a love of French and journalism. He was an avid reader of French newspapers and wrote a book, The National Daily Press of France, about the history and business of newspapers. And he was in 2006 awarded a knighthood, the Knight of the Order of the Academic Palms by the French government in recognition of his research and teaching at Iowa State and editing of the French Review. Clyde had a curiosity about everything, and he never ceased to amaze me with the things he knew. He was a voracious reader of newspapers, politics, history, art, architecture, and more. And growing up in his parents' small printing business sparked his interest in printing and its history. He was excited to see a Gutenberg Bible and a demonstration of the Gutenberg press in Mainz, Germany. He noted at the time that not much had changed in printing for 500 years, but he was critical of the way the demonstrator jumped up on the press for every sheet of paper he printed. He was never idle or bored because he always had a book, a newspaper, or a camera in his hands. And he loved photography, and he never went anywhere without his cameras. He walked around Ames taking pictures of architectural details of houses, flowers, and so on. And he adapted quickly to digital cameras because he got immediate feedback on his photos. Certainly a fun traveling companion because he knew so much about the histories of the US, Canada, and Europe. He loved France, and he felt a strong kinsmanship with the Scots because he was of Scottish heritage, but he was interested in all cultures, especially of Europe. And I'm very grateful for the 42 years that Clyde and I shared. We both had a love of languages, cultures, travel, music, puns, and politics. And I miss his astute analyses of the day's politics after our daily reading of the Des Moines Register. He was a fierce defender of the working class and stood up for social justice and racial and gender equality and cared deeply about his students. Of the notes I got from former students, this one from Arnie Sign was my favorite. Dr. Thogmartin was a great and kindly French professor, an easygoing, small-town Midwesterner who gave us students with a similar background the idea that we could follow in his footsteps. I ended up teaching Italian at the University of Iowa. He will not be forgotten by the many students who were in his class. I will remember him forever.
Thank you very much. Next will be Becky Jones. We're doing a tribute for Norman Boyles.
Hi, I'm Norman's oldest daughter. And Dad was born in November 17th and 31 and died August 1st, 2020. In 1964, he came to Iowa State. We left for 1 year and came back to Iowa State. He was the chairman of the faculty council. He was 6 years on the athletic council, 10 years as faculty athletic representative to the Big 8 and the Big 12. He retired in 1997. And those were the things that the committees, but he also enjoyed his work, his day-to-day work with the education students. Dad was a huge Cyclone fan, of course, had a great sense of humor, sarcastic sense of humor. He was a woodworker. I'm sitting in front of a cabinet he made for me for my crafting supplies. An avid golfer and golfed up until almost his last year of life. He loved his family and his friends very much, and we miss him so much. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Next, Douglas Palmer, a tribute for Paul Palmer.
Carolyn, was that done? Yes.
There we go. We're unmuted now.
Yeah.
Thank you and good morning. Paul Palmer was hired to come, pardon me. Paul Palmer was hired to come to work with Frank Spedding's team at Iowa State University's Ames Laboratory after his service in the U.S. Navy near the end of World War II and his graduation from college at South Dakota State University. During his career with the Ames Lab, Paul was perhaps best known for preparing the highest purity rare earths research materials in the world. The materials he produced were used in research at the lab and around the world to help develop the many applications that rare earths are used in today. Paul was a good Christian and is dearly missed as a good neighbor, loving son, brother, husband, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. He was always proud to be a part of Iowa State's continuing legacy of excellence, and we can all be grateful he was part of Iowa State's family as well. Thank you and have a great Memorial Day.
Thank you, Douglas. I appreciate that. Next will be Lee J. To pay tribute to Jerry Simons.
Hi, my name is Lee Streifler. I was one of Jerry Simons' athletes on the springboard diving team. I was asked by the family to do a tribute to him for Jonathan, Gloria, Dave, and Jeff. So Jerry Simons was a longstanding figure of success at the ISU men's and women's diving program and scuba diving instructor. You might say he took you from the depths and brought you to the stars. To identify a single moment or highlight of Jerry's career would be a disservice to him and those he impacted. Jerry said he never worked a day in his life because he did what he loved and loved what he did. He was a coach, a teacher, a student, and a mentor to anyone who had the privilege to catch a glimpse of the world through his eyes. He welcomed you into that world with open arms and always had a long-standing positive effect on the lives he touched. At times, he made you challenge the playing field of life, not to test the waters, but to help his colleagues, students, and athletes achieve their goals perceived to be beyond their reach. If I had to label an accomplishment, it would be that he made you a better person. You attained goals that were out of your reach, and he was always your biggest fan, saying, "I knew you could do it all along." Jerry was a student of life and one of the best storytellers. He loved watching events unfold and retelling the stories for years to come. If you had the privilege of being a figure in one of those stories, it was of the highest praise. Sometimes, as Jerry told those stories, tears would come streaming down his face and it marred the content, but the joy in the telling was evident. We have all sat around a room while these stories were being told and loved that we are a part of something bigger. The greatest experience that I have, and many others have had, was when someone came up to me and asked who I was. The reason for the introduction was that my name had come up in some of those stories, and the person had to verify that the person in the story was real. It was an honor, and every story was true, or at least close to the facts. In the words of Jimmy Buffett, what we gave each other ain't exactly clear. Probably comes under the heading of souvenirs. Pieces, bits and pieces add up through the years. I've collected a small fortune in souvenirs. Jerry gave us more than he took. I can still hear Jerry's infectious laugh as he clarifies my rendition of his stories. Jerry's stories and the souvenir he gave us will continue to be shared by those he touched. May your journey continue, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Carol Beard for Merlin Isles.
Yes, I'd like to say a few words for my brother-in-law, Merlin Isles. He worked over 20 years at Iowa State University, commuting 45 minutes one way, and still he never missed a day of work at the power plant. He drove many times in blinding snowstorms. I'd like to say a little poem about Merlin. He never looked for praises. He was never one to boast. He just went on quietly working for the ones he loved the most. His dreams were seldom spoken. His words were and most of the time his worries went unspoken too. He was there, a firm foundation through all our storms of life, a steady hand to hold on to in times of strife and stress. A common man we could turn to when times were good or bad. One of our greatest blessings, the man we called Merlin. The one thing that Merlin would have wanted me to say today was about his working at Iowa State are the many friendships that he made with his fellow workers. Those same friends have been there for moral support and help around her farm over this since his passing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted my microphone. Words.
We didn't hear what you said, Geraldine.
I'm sorry. Actually, I missed somebody. Let's do Curtis Christensen. So Curtis, I think you must be on the phone. You're going to need to unmute yourself. Well, while we're waiting for that, while he gets unmuted, let's go ahead and go to Jeannie Schwartz to remember Evelyn. And then don't forget to unmute your microphone. I am not seeing her. Well, let's go to the next person then. Deb Dylan.
Those of you who knew my father know he was a man of few words, so I will try to follow in his footsteps. I put together, after he passed last Memorial Day, a list of 10 things I learned from my dad. Accept what life brings you. Be of service. Love unconditionally. Follow the rules. Have faith in God. Plan ahead. Be responsible. We are all equal and deserve respect. Contribute your time and resources and vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Curtis? Curtis, it's your turn.
Geraldine, if you have a number for him, I could, well, I can't phone him because he's on his phone.
Well, his microphone is unmuted, but for some reason, Curtis, we are not hearing you. I don't know why. But you are unmuted. I think that was everybody else I had on the list, and so we'll try to work him in if we still can later.
That was your last.
I'm Don Bites, and I was on your list.
Oh, I'm sorry, Don.
Shall I go?
You bet. Go right ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Don Bites. I'm a professor in animal science and biochemistry, and I wanted to pay special tribute to my good friend, Jerry Young. Jerry was a professor at Iowa State for 35 years after receiving his training at Berry College and North Carolina State University. He and his wife, Charlotte, retired to Franklin, Tennessee to be near children. Jerry and I worked together in the nutritional physiology group of animal science for 33 years, and never once did we raise our voices with each other. We were genuine colleagues. Jerry was a wonderful teacher and major professor for many graduate students. He was recognized worldwide as a leader of ruminant nutrition, dairy nutrition specifically. Jerry was a very humble and quiet leader. He was also a very loyal Cyclone fan. So Jerry, I miss you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Curtis, are we still, can we get you yet? I can see your phone is unmuted if you want to try again. I'm sorry, but for some reason we're not hearing you at all, and I apologize for that. So I think we'll have to move on, Sedalia.
Thank you, Geraldine. Is there anyone else who would like to say something about somebody in your family or your loved one or friend who has died that did not send anything to Geraldine? This is kind of open for you to just jump in and say you want to speak. I'll give you a little bit of time to think about that.
I'd like to make a comment about somebody. Don Bites again. A longtime colleague, Gene Freeman, passed away this past year, and Gene and I worked on research related to mitochondria in dairy cattle. Gene was probably considered the father of dairy cattle breeding. He had many graduate students who went on and did big things, and they honored him with a very large symposium at the American Dairy Science Association. That was very wonderful and showed the scientific stature of Gene Freeman, my good friend.
Thank you, Don. Is there anybody else who would like to say a few words?
Well, this is Peter Rossum. I'm in the economics department, and there were 4 colleagues who passed away over the last 2 years that were recognized. Joan Mattingly was my secretary for a few years, and I'm sitting at a desk here, and there's a pen stand that she had built for me, which has it cross-stitched and it says "Gone Fishing." And her husband was a real avid fisherman and had made some lures for me. So Joan passed away a year ago, and her funeral was in a driving snowstorm, but it was impressive as to how many people made the trip to Boone for her service. Wally Huffman and Dudley Luckett passed away. Both were distinguished professors. Dudley was the type of teacher who would walk in and say, really quietly would say, you know, you had the impression that he knew everything that there was to know, and he would share a little bit of that knowledge with you today. Dudley was a dear friend and was treasurer of my political campaign when I had the illusion of becoming a city councilman here in Ames. Dudley, a long-term avid member of the community. Wally Huffman, his major professor was T.W. Schultz at the University of Chicago. And I think T.W. Schultz, Nobel laureate, sort of viewed Wally as his gift back to Iowa State for having left a past chair of the department here. And then Paul Doak, and I'll tell a little story about Paul. Paul was a longtime advisor of the undergraduate agricultural business program at Iowa State. And the story is that there was one student who had come in, and Paul said, well, you're going to have a suit if you're going to be going out and interviewing. And the student said he didn't have a suit. So Paul took him across the street to Campus Town. They had I think it was Mormon Clothiers was in Campus Town at the time, and Paul bought him a suit so he could go and interview. So 4 members that were longtime loyal members of the department here. I also I noticed Clyde Thogmorton, an inaugural member of Phi Beta Kappa here at Iowa State. Pat Teal, who past president of our society, and others, but a lot of really long time great members of Iowa State. So I acknowledge them. Thank you.
My name is Judy Winklepleck. I'd like to add a comment about Lynn Fawcett, and the kids have talked about their mom. Lynn and I worked in the same building at Iowa State for years, and if I had to summarize what Lynn gave to Iowa State, was she gave a sense of hope to a lot of students. She was a nurse in the student health service, and she worked with both students from this country as well as a lot of international students who were going through all kinds of trauma and problems and challenges. And I watched her for years. She always brought hope to people who were having challenges that many of us have not encountered. So I celebrate the hope that she brought to so many people.
Thank you, Judy. I'm not good with chat, but I had somebody who wanted to talk about Bob Kern. Is that right? Or Bob Kern is the person?
Yes, it is.
Okay, you're on. Laura.
Okay, my name is Laura Miller, and I'd like to make a comment about Bob Kern and also about John Johnson. Both were mentors to me. I worked at Iowa State in communications, and Bob was he had retired, but he was a lifelong teacher and communicator, and he reached out to anyone who was new in the area, no matter what department they worked in. And John Johnson was an extension educator, and he was an extension educator till the very end. When he retired, he helped other people with honeybees, and he was my mentor for honeybees. So both had a love of teaching and sharing with other people. And I do appreciate what they gave to so many people. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And also I have a note from William Christensen. And William is muted.
Yes, this is Bill Christensen.
Hi.
Hi, I understand my brother is unable to tap in for a technical reason, so I'm going to pinch hit for him for a moment about my father, our father, George Christensen. He devoted his entire life to Iowa State University. Back in the 1950s, he was a professor of veterinary anatomy. Then he served as dean of the vet college for 2 years. And then for 25 or so plus years, he was vice president for academic affairs and worked very closely with Dr. Parks. After that, he is director for international, where he's bringing the Iowa State University to the world. In his retirement, my father traveled the world with his camera. He had a passion for landscape photography. But really his top love was Iowa State. One person mentioned the basketball games at the Armory. My father was there cheering on the Iowa State team. He was in the Hilton Coliseum cheering, etc. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dorothy Cresswell, did you have an opportunity to say something yet?
I'm finally unmuted. I just wanted to speak hopefully briefly about John Cresswell. He was with the Cooperative Extension Service, serving first as a crop production specialist, well, actually first as an extension director, then crop production in the Cedar Rapids, and then the Central Iowa area. He finished his career doing a statewide nutrient management project on water quality, really quite a project. And out of that came a weekly series of nutrient management minutes to help farmers get practical, useful ways to best use the nutrients they had, whether it was fertilizer or manure or whatever. And it's kind of an earthy subject, if you will, but really important to the agricultural part of Iowa. Also a number of fact sheets, and he was pretty prolific in what he published, but I won't go into all those details. When he retired in 2002, he didn't really retire. He said he was refired. So he then focused all his energy and creativity on service. And that manifested itself in a number of local and broader groups. But his main focus centered down into Lions Clubs International and their vision efforts. And so he was involved in vision screening every fall semester, if you will. He and other people in the New Braunfels, Texas area would go out to, I think it was some 50 schools, where they would work primarily with the elementary students, but also preschool and some middle school children, some 5,000 to 6,000 kids each year. So it was several days each week. And they not only did a preliminary test of kids, but also helped provide funding for children that could not afford prescription glasses. He was also the LEO coordinator, which is the youth arm for Lions, and did that for several years, a number of projects to help the mainly fifth grade through the senior level of school. His other love and involvement was in the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association. Served as local chapter president. Even he was serving as state president when he finally passed away. Well, he resigned the month before he passed away, but always focusing on service. He was basically a servant leader. So whether it was during his professional career or his retirement, he was always focused on helping others. Thank you. And thank you for having this.
Thank you, Dorothy.
I have another name on the list, Ruth Mccully.
Yes, I was just going to announce her.
I'm just talking extemporaneously about my husband. And I was thinking, you know, what would be the thing of the word that would sum up his life and his relations to the university and to his students and his teaching. And I think that word is love. And you people who knew John would agree with me. When he died, I was just amazed at all the communications I got and all the things people said, especially about relationships and his teaching and what it had meant to him. He was a medievalist, which didn't quite fit into Iowa State University, but he taught a lot of other courses. And one of his favorites was Bible, and another was business communications. And he felt that that was so important for students to know, as well as Chaucer and maybe Shakespeare, which he also taught. But I just miss him very much. I think the university misses a lot also because he's gone. He said before he died, he would like on his tombstone to be written, a great lover. And I said, I don't think so, John. I don't think a lot of people would quite understand that. But he felt that way about his students and his teaching.
He also had a sense of humor. Thank you.
That's the main thing I wanted to say about him.
Thank you. Susan Jellinger. I probably mispronounced that. I apologize.
Well, thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit and give a tribute to my father. I know I wrote one and sent that in to ISU alum, and that's going to be on the board, but I wanted to speak a little bit more of him. I think because this being Memorial Day, my father was a veteran, and yet for a long time, he didn't embrace, or he felt somewhat off of that because he never made it over to, quote, the war. The day before he was going to be going to the European theater, he went on a buddy's training flight, and there was a big crash, and my dad ended up in the hospital for about 11 months. He was told by a doctor when he was being discharged and after many months of rehabilitation, Tom, go out and live your life because it's not going to be a very long one. And so my dad embraced life with gusto, and he was disabled. He lost the movement of his knee in one leg. He was, stiff leg. It was a little bit shorter. He lost a couple fingers on his left hand. I could tell you some jokes that came up about that. And so he met my mother. They had I won't say a whirlwind romance, but fairly quickly got married, started the family, 3 children. And Dad always had goals. Now, I said my father was disabled. I never knew that. I never felt that from him because he was always striving for goals. He got his degree. Thank you, GI Bill. He went on, became an architect, contractor. And my mother was always more than just a wife, a real partner. She could tell when my dad was getting antsy, something to do. She said, Tom, you need to broaden out. Some people had told him about an opening out in Iowa State. And so he applied for that. Mom pushed him to go. He didn't want to at first. In fact, he kind of blew off the first interview, but they contacted him again, and so he came to Ames and got the job and started. He was the professor in charge of creating the construction engineering program. With lots of support and lots of help. Dad poured his heart and soul into that program. People have talked about others who loved the students. He and Mom really embraced them. They would have get-togethers at the house at least once a year. And from starting out with, I think, a program that had 4 students, there were, by the time he retired 20-some years later, Professor Emeritus, there were over 400 students, and not just a baccalaureate, but master's and doctorate program. And now it's merged in with some other engineering, I think civil and environmental engineering over in that department. I think one of the proudest moments that he had was on the 50th anniversary of that program. And I know I was amazed at it. ISU did a bang up job. You know, it wasn't just honoring my father. He was a kind of a keynote and stuff, but it was really honoring so much of Iowa State and so much of how that investment in the future and in the students, and how students and teachers reach back to continue giving. My dad got up to do the keynote, spoke for an hour, and I was amazed because he went up and he had one 4x6 note card, and there were 7 words on it so that he'd remember different points to make. But he spoke, as I said, for an hour, bringing up people's names, students, other faculty, people within the university who were helpful. I'm not sure that he mentioned a couple that he didn't feel were helpful. He might have done that at the table after drinking a couple of drinks. But his time at Iowa State was really important, and it echoed within his 3 children. I graduated from Iowa State. My brother graduated from Iowa State. My sister Nancy graduated from Iowa State. So we all have deep roots, even though I'm the only one still in Iowa, but we have deep roots with Iowa State. And thank you very much for this. And thank you for all the students and friends who kept in touch with him. I'll just leave it at that. So thank you.
Thank you, Susie.
So much. Yes. So now we have, let's see, I'm sorry, Leslie.
You have some others, Geraldine.
I do. I
have one. I'll just go ahead and say mine.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to say just a very short tribute to Lynn Graham. Lynn Graham was one of the first people that I met when I came to Iowa State in 1969 as a doctoral. And from that date forward, we were friends, and we stayed friends. And Lynn was the only person that I've ever been aware of. I'm sure I've known some others who got tenure this way. She was an assistant professor with tenure, and that was something that was done early on. So she didn't have a PhD. So people would always ask, well, how did that happen? Well, you know, times change in how promotions and happen. But Lynn Graham was a very shy and not very, she would never probably make a speech about somebody extemporaneously, or even when she had a speech, sometimes her depression would get the best of her and she wouldn't get to the conference. But she always was loved by the students at Iowa State University. She got very good ratings, and she was in the area of children and play materials. She also was worked in children's literature. She and I presented some on children and death, any topic related to children, and a special topic like children and sexuality, children and self-esteem. She happened to also be a nursery school teacher for one of my children. And she was a very quiet sort of nursery school teacher. And when I would say, well, Lynn, why isn't Brandon doing more artwork? And she would say, well, that's because he's going to be an architect, I think, and he likes to use his hands in other ways. Well, he didn't become an architect, but she did not say everybody has to do certain things. She also was very nonviolent, and you not only could not play with a gun, you couldn't act like you had a gun. So that was one thing I would say about her. And the second thing is that she did teach us in our department how to deal with depression as a part of life and as a part of living. At one time she decided, and this was, a long time ago when people didn't talk about depression, and she sent out a full-page message to the faculty and told us what her depression was like, what it felt like, and how it impacted her. And being as really retiring and not wanting to speak, she said a lot to so many people, and that was one of the ways that she said a lot to our faculty. But I know that over time she impacted the lives of many, many students, and people will still say to me, what's happened to Lynn Graham? So they loved her and they cared for her. She also has a daughter who isn't here today, but I wanted to recognize that she did have a person who was contacted but wasn't here today. So I wanted to say that for Lynn Graham. Thank you for listening.
So the next person I have in the chat is Don Betts to say a few words about Susie Zafurano.
Yes, I wanted to make sure that she was especially recognized. Susie was a dear friend, and many attributes could be stated about her. She was a great mother of 5 children and a great supporter of her husband, Dan Zafurano. And I think many of you recognize the fact that the Zafurano name on campus is very prominent. Dan was chair of physics for many years and dean of the graduate college, and the physics building is named Zafurano Hall. So I wanted to give special tribute to Susie Zafurano.
Thank you, Don.
Okay, the next person I have is Lenore. Lynn.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Eleanor, and I wanted to say a few words about Nick Lauder. I was his colleague in the Department of Plant Pathology and Microbiology, and Nick was a plant geneticist, a corn geneticist with the USDA ARS, but he was also a faculty member in our department. And he was just such a positive, kind person. He was also brilliant as a scientist. I feel like his mind was always racing and always trying to solve problems, whether it was something logistics in the department, the best way to get coffee during seminar or something like that. He always had a suggestion to make. He always had a creative idea, a creative approach to deal with anything from personal issues to logistics in the department, and of course to science and big things like recruiting more students or faculty dynamics and teaching. So he was just a very active member of our department and really a great scientist. But he's also just someone who always touched all of us, really, because of how kind he was. He always had a smile on his face. He was bursting with energy and humor. And then he was just a very involved member of his community. I remember when my husband and I first moved to Somerset, we lived in a townhouse in Somerset, a neighborhood, and he was in the homeowners association. And there he was Saturday early mornings, when there was tree planting. He was going around knocking on doors and explaining how to plant these trees and in the neighborhood, and making other decisions for the community and helping as much as he could. And even on a more personal basis, also, he has it's 3 young kids, and we have a younger son, and he was always reaching out, saying, our kids outgrew the bicycle. Would you like it for your son, or would you like this bed that he made? And so he touched all of us in so many ways, and it's just very sad. He left us all very young and left a very young family, and so yeah, I just want to acknowledge that he is dearly missed by his colleagues and friends, and he's a really special person. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenore.
Thank you. The next person I have is Diana Shonrock to talk about Lynn Graham.
Yeah, I kind of have Lynn was my friend for a long time, but what I wanted to say are 2 things. One, I co-taught in children's literature with Lynn for years and years, and she was such an empathetic person with all of the students in her class. And I loved working with her because every time I did something, I learned something new. But I think the other thing I want to say is thank you for all of the hundreds of children who came to after school programs at the lab school, as my children did, or to preschool programs, and met Lynn in the kitchen where she loved to work with children. Cookies were her idea of the best deal going. And you can always get every kid involved if you have cookies. So they made more cookies than I can think of. And it seemed to turn out okay. But a thank you for a lot of years of service, because Lynn Graham was a great friend and a great teacher, I thought.
Amen.
Thank you.
The next person I have on my list is Janine Tellinghusen to talk about Gary Wiggins.
I had to unmute. So Dad worked for the university for 28 years as a retirement benefits advisor. So he worked in Beardshire, and so he saw a lot of people come through. And a few of his favorite things in his personal life were deer hunting and his family. He also enjoyed guns, so he collected guns. And one of the funny stories that we have about him is that one of the Christmases, we were having a buffet at our family member's house, and we had a chocolate fountain that year, and not very many people probably knew that Dad battled diabetes, but he did a good job managing it, except this one Christmas, we noticed that he disappeared and we couldn't find him. And somebody finally went into the kitchen and saw Dad basically feasting over the chocolate fountain. So we always thought that was a funny little story about him, but I know that he took a lot of pride in his work, and he really enjoyed working for the university, and it just provided a really stable life for us and stable work for him. And he came from an unstable background, so we just appreciate that as a family. And I'm a graduate from ISU as well, and my mother also worked at ISU, so just wanted to pay tribute to Dad and thank him for all his hard work.
Thank you, Janine. We love to hear those stories. Thank you so much. So I had in the chat, I had a message from Ruth that Joy wanted to say a few words, but I don't see Joy online. So Ruth, if by any chance, is she with you?
I am here with Ruth.
Excellent.
And I am also a graduate of Iowa State. And I just wanted to pay tribute to the foreign language teachers that passed away in the last couple of years. The foreign language department was my home away from home while I was at Iowa State, and Joanna Courteau was so welcoming and took care of me. She challenged me as a student. in her literature classes, and she took me into her home and introduced me to her daughters. And I just felt like she really looked after me during my time at Iowa State as a person as well as a student. And I also wanted to mention Clyde Thodmartin. I took linguistics from him and thoroughly enjoyed learning about Romance, history of Romance languages from him. It was one of my favorite classes. And I still have the book that he wrote on people traveling to France to help them. And I don't know, there was something special about him. And also Judy LaCasa, who has not been mentioned, is another person that, while I never took a class from her, she welcomed me as a student, even though I wasn't one of her students. And that was the way the whole department was when I was there. And I just want to recognize the department as a whole, as well as the individual teachers.
Thank you, Joy.
I don't have anybody else in chat, but if there's still someone out there who would still like to say a few words, you're more than welcome. Just unmute your microphone.
Geraldine, Sedalia, this is Jeff. I just want to just take a moment and recognize the ISU retirees, as well as thank Iowa State University for being a place that we can present a program like this. You know, it says a lot for a public institution to use this time to celebrate its former employees, and for the ISU retirees to take time to remember their colleagues. So to each of you and your committee, thank you for taking time to carry out this work, the beautiful presentation of each of the individuals, and then allowing time for personal reflection. So again, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Jeff he didn't introduce himself. He's was just getting to his message, but Jeff is the Talbot Endowed President and CEO of the Iowa State University Alumni Association. And he's wearing the colors today and in a striped sort of interesting design there. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for your special tributes. As Jeff said, they are very heartwarming, very touching. And I really appreciate each one of you. And you can, you still may send those tributes in to Geraldine to be put on the website for the ISU Retirees Association Memorial Day service. Before we close, I do have a few more things I still need to let you know before the benediction. I especially wish to thank the following people for all of their assistance today. Dr. Charles Knicker, the ISU President's Office, Dr. Jeff Johnson, the individuals who wrote and spoke tributes, the ISU Retirees Association Memorial Day Committee, Green Hills Retirement Community, Peter Lawler and the ISU Horticulture Department for the flower boxes at the ISU Cemetery, and last, but very importantly, Geraldine Logue, without whom all of this work would not have gotten coordinated, pulled together, and some of it just plain old, much of it just plain old done to become this beautiful service you see here today. Thank you to each and every one of you and others as well. I also want to say something personally, and that is that 2 years ago in 2019, I was sitting in the audience to memorialize my husband, Ike Crace. It was then that I looked around and knew this program was really special. It was important, and it was worth all that all those people had put into it. I remember saying a tribute to Ike, and Janine, like you, I could hardly get through it without the tears coming, and I didn't, and that's okay. This is a place where that is just fine. And that memorial service 2 years ago remains to this day very special to me. Thank you for letting me say that personal part. And now a final reminder. If you've not sent your tribute to Geraldine Logue, I can't say this enough, to be included on the ISU Retirees Association website, you may still do so. It sounds like I'm trying to sell something, but I'm not. I want you to get it there. Remember, Geraldine needs to receive those by Thursday, June the 3rd. And finally, after the benediction, you're welcome to stay online and visit with others and ask any questions that you still have that we might be able to answer of Geraldine, Mary Lynn, or me. Dr. Charles Knicker will now close with the benediction.
As we leave this celebration, may we be comforted by the words we've had with others who also have experienced grief and the recognitions shared by all. With this, may we be transformed by the accounts of these amazing accomplishments, the stories of gentle joy and mischievous humor, the memories of intense friendships. So even though we know our grief will persist, may we hear the messages that we received today as words also from that great spirit of eternal love that say to us, do not stand at our graves and weep. We are not there. Now, we are not asleep. We are in 1,000 spring winds. We are in the summer sunlight of ripened grain. We are in the autumn raindrops. And we are in the diamond glints of winter's snow. We are not asleep. We are in the breaking sounds of the morning. In the afternoon, in the flights of birds. And in the evening and night, the stars that sparkle, we would like to believe, with cardinal and gold. Do not stand at our graves and weep. We do not sleep. We are with you. Amen.
Thank you so much for joining us for this important day in the life of Iowa State University. We hope you have a great Memorial Day lunch and afternoon. And remember that if you would like to stay on, feel free to do that. The space will be open, and just have a great afternoon. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for those wonderful tributes and the ones you're going to write if you didn't write some today. Thank you.
So if you want to stay and chat, please unmute your microphones and turn your videos on and we'll visit.